Welcome back to the Drive Home Reviews podcast, where I review the movies that I have just seen as I am driving home from the theater. And I have a feeling that this is going to be a very contradictory review. The stuff I'm going to talk about as I'm kind of thinking out the structure of what I want to say and the things that stuck out to me in this movie, I realize that a lot of them are going to sound negative, and maybe they are negative. So I want to be upfront and state that despite what tangents I might go on during the course of this discussion, that I actually did enjoy this movie, which is kind of amazing because I really didn't think I was going to. I have just kind of a lukewarm relationship with the first Freaky Friday. I was out of the age group for whom that Freaky Friday and Mean Girls and all that was aimed. I'm also, this is not to be dismissive, I was not a teenage girl at the time. Not to say that I'm one now, but you know what I mean. And that's fine, but let's be honest, that was the target audience for films like that. And that's fine, no problem there. You can still enjoy it. I thought that the first one was good enough. I thought it was a fun little movie. It wasn't life-changing to me as it seems to have been to a lot of young people of that generation. So the idea of a second one was nothing I was really excited about. Moreover, the 20-year-later sequels are kind of hit and miss, So I was very, what's the word I'm looking for? I was very cautious about, how was this movie actually going to work? Because Freaky Friday, the body switching thing, is kind of a gimmick that really only works directly once. What can you do with that in a series or a franchise that doesn't just entail you repeating the same beats and jokes and life lessons and everything all over again? So I wasn't sure about this one. And lo and behold, I actually have to admit that I found this to be a very enjoyable film. So before we get into that, let's talk about the setup for anybody who doesn't know. So yes, it is 20 years later. Jamie Lee Curtis's character is now the grandmother. Lindsay Lohan is now a mother to her own teenage daughter, played by Julia Butters. Really good casting on that, by the way, because Julia Butters does look like she could be Lindsay Lohan's daughter. In fact, in certain shots, it is kind of hard to tell them apart, to be completely honest. And she's going through the trials and tribulations of raising a teenager on her own. We'll talk about that here in a second. Also, Julia Butters is having issues at school with a young British girl played by Sophia Hammonds. They are, Julia Butters is a tomboy. She likes to surf, whereas Sophia Hammonds is a posh British girl who wants to be a fashion designer. Well, they're just complete opposites. And things get screwy when they get into trouble at school, and both Lindsay Lohan and Sophia Hammond's father, as played by Manny Jacinto, both come to the parent-teacher conference. They're both single parents. They immediately hit it off, and they begin a relationship. Flash forward 6 months, they're getting married. They're all living in the same house. The daughters hate each other. It's a whole thing, and Freaky Friday happens. The gimmick this time being that the two teenage girls switch bodies with the two adults. So Lindsay Lohan and her daughter Julia Butters switch places, and Sophia Hammonds and Jamie Lee Curtis switch places. And now that they are in the bodies of two adults, the girls decide the best way to get what they want is to break up their parents and, wacky shenanigans, hijinks, life lessons. You get where this is going. So first thing I have to say is that this is one of those instances where I really feel like the 20-year later sequel actually benefits the series, because now that our two original characters have different perspectives as to where they are in life, and they are not switching bodies with each other again. Now they're both in the bodies of people younger, considering that Lindsay Lohan is approximately supposed to be the same age that Jamie Lee Curtis was in the original. And now they are both in the bodies of modern day teenagers, Gen Z, Y, I don't know. I can't remember who's in what category. But both of them kind of experiencing being young, and it also gives the actors, Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan, different characters to play this time out. It's kind of like, this is a dumb analogy, but it's the best one I can kind of come up with. It's kind of like in the second Jumanji, where instead of having The Rock and Kevin Hart just play the same characters, now they're playing Danny DeVito and Danny Glover, and Jack Black was playing a whole host of other people. So that makes it more interesting. It's not just repeating the same beats. The characters now have different things to play, different dynamics to play. So I think it actually worked better. I also got to say that the acting is as good as it ever was, and that is a compliment. You have this movie anchored by two really good actors. Jamie Lee Curtis has always been an incredible actor, and Lindsay Lohan has always been an incredible actor. You could see it when she was a kid. Go watch that first Parent Trap movie. That is a brilliant young actor. And giving them kind of room to play and letting them have fun and work off each other with two new characters to experiment with, it works. It works really, really well. Julia Butters and Sophia Hammonds are also good. They don't get as much to do as they're both playing, adults in kids' bodies. And there's not a whole lot of scenes of them doing anything. The most that we really get from them is some fun bits where they're out and they're kind of having fun and they're eating all the junk food that they want to eat because they're young and they have the metabolism. There's a great scene where they're on a couple of rent-a-scooters and they crash them and they're like, I'm okay, nothing's broken, I'm invincible. I think when you get to a certain age, I know I do as a high school teacher, and I see some of these kids just bounding around corners, slamming into things, dropping to their knees really hard, and you're just like, oh, you're going to want those later, son. You're going to want those later. So, yeah, so their stuff is kind of limited to give Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan room to play, which I think is the smart choice. Julia Butters and Sophia Hammonds are good, but they're not at that level yet. I think they can get there. I think they will be there, in a couple years. But I think you got two really talented actors headlining and anchoring your film. Let them do their thing. And the movie smartly gets out of the way and lets them have fun. And I think that's the other thing that really benefits this movie. It is fun. It is a movie that is not afraid to have fun. I feel like a lot of movies these days are just have a fear of that, to just let something be enjoyable. And as I watch this movie and as I look at, behind the scenes pictures, it really does feel like a movie that everybody involved was just kind of having a blast with. It looks like the kind of movie you wish you were involved in, because the atmosphere just feels very natural and very fun. Hopefully we don't come to find out it was terrible and everybody hated each other and all that. I hope that doesn't happen. But just from what you see on screen, it looks like everybody came to play, and that sense of enjoyment and that sense of connection really translates. You can see it in movies where people are not having fun versus ones where people are. I also have to say that I like they bring back like just about everybody from the original. Lindsay Lohan's band, the guy who played her brother, Mark Hamill is back, also still just being really likable. I really liked Manny Jacinto as Lindsay Lohan's boyfriend and Sophia Hammond's father. What a charming actor. And he is just all charm and sincerity. And a hell of a dancer. They do a scene early on where they're going to learn the dance for their for the wedding, and they're doing like the dirty dancing. I had the time of my life, and he's doing the Patrick Swayze. It's like, dude, brother can move. So, but yeah, he brings a real casual likability to the character. A real patient person. The same thing that Mark Hamill brought to the original. I think that these two guys, honestly, are kind of the unsung heroes of these movies, because those characters are the two father, stepfather, whatever, both those characters are the two that get the least amount of screen time, they get the least amount to do. And rightfully so. This isn't a thing where it's like, oh, we need men, blah, blah, blah. It's a movie for mothers and daughters. So yeah, the men characters should be the side supporting characters. So they don't get a lot to do, but it is those are still two very difficult roles, because you go too far the one way, the guy is too good to be true, and you don't believe for a second that they're a real person. You go too far the other way and they're unlikable. And we need to feel for these guys in the limited amount of screen time and the limited amount of interaction they have with everybody. You need to have that. And I think Mark Hamill did in the first one, but I think Manny Jacinto does it even better in this one, that everybody he's on screen with, he has a genuine connection, or is trying to have a genuine connection. He's trying to be what Julia Butters needs in a stepfather. He's trying to look out for Sophia Hammond as a father. He's trying to be a good co-parent with Lindsay Lohan, and trying to be a good partner to her. And it's a tightrope. But he feels real and feels genuine, and he gives the film an authenticity that I really liked. I wanted to see more of him, and that's what a good actor should do. That's what especially a good character actor. That's what they should do. And I think the cast is really good. I think that again, the change in setting and the changing in body types and body swaps make the film work, and doesn't just make it a retread of the original. And I think that that's good. So I had a really fun time watching it. I was happy to watch it, which is even harder sometimes when you're watching these via a streaming service, because unlike when you go to the movies and you pay the money to see the film, you really feel like, okay, I have to sit here and sit this out. I can't. Getting up and leaving, I've only got up and left a theater a couple of times in my life. But when you're watching it at a streaming service, it's a lot easier to go, I could keep watching this, or I could go back and rewatch an episode of Family Guy I've seen 100 times. And I never felt that with this one. I was very happy to keep watching it and very happy to kind of see how everything worked itself out. So I think this was a fun picture. It's a fun movie. It's a heartfelt film. It's enjoyable. And especially, I think, for its target audience of mothers and daughters, and now, maybe grandmothers, mothers and daughters, step parents and stepchildren. I think people can go and watch this with their families and really enjoy it. It doesn't devolve into cheap humor. There's not a gas or a poop joke or a vomit joke. It never kind of segues into that lazy humor that, let's be honest, you get into a lot if this film was aimed at young boys. No one gets hit in the crotch in this, as far as I can remember. So yeah, I enjoyed it. So now that I've said that, I'm going to get into this, but I want to preference this, that this is a section that I am calling shit that only bothered me and doesn't really have a bearing on my appreciation of the movie as a whole. And I don't know what they could have changed to make me happy, but this is shit about this movie that just bugs me.
What do you want, Lindsay? Tell me what you want. Well, I'll tell you what you want. You want nothing. You want nothing.
How miserable do I have to be before you're happy?
So let's go back to one of the first things I've said. So, understanding that this, again, the target audience for this, mothers and daughters, now grandmothers, all of that I just went over 5 seconds ago. I feel like at certain points, the certain male characters and certain male connections are ignored, which is fine in a movie that is not targeted towards a male audience. I want to stress that. But I feel like if certain things had been included, it might have made certain bonds stronger. So one of the big things going on in this, and one of the reasons why Sophia Hammond is acting out and why she doesn't want the marriage between her dad and Lindsay Lohan, and why, is because she misses her mom. Her mom passed away, and she's having a real hard time accepting a new reality, which I think is a really good, a really excellent way to come at this, kind of mirroring what Lindsay Lohan had going on in the original, but to a different extent. Meanwhile, in the opening, we find out that, again, that Lindsay Lohan is a single parent, but we don't ever hear who is Julia Butters' father. Where is he? Was he never in the picture? Was this a sperm donor situation? Was this, her gay friend situation? Is this her father's dead? We never find out. It's just, she's just there. And I feel like that if they had brought up where he was and that absence that Julia Butters' character feels in her life, that could have been a bonding experience between the two girls. The idea that one misses her mother and the other says, well, I'm sorry, but you have good memories. I don't know my father. I've never met him, or even going more into if Julia Butters' character was fine with not knowing her father, then we could play into that a little bit more as to why she's having such a hard time accepting Manny Jacinto as a father. If she and her mother got along just fine as far as she was concerned all these years, then the addition of this new energy could be a way in. No, but they choose instead to go with the big conflict is they don't want to move. They're trying to decide where they're going to live. If they're going to go back to England, which is what Sophia Hammonds wants, or if they're going to stay in California, which is what Julia Butters wants. That's the root of their conflict. Is Julia Butters doesn't want to leave California. Okay, fair enough. Something that I think a lot of kids can understand, the idea of moving away. But I feel like it's not as strong a link as the shared loss of a parent, which offers much harder and much more complicated characterizations. I totally think the actors you had could have pulled that off. I really do. I think the script chose to go in a more simplistic way than it could have. I think they really could have gone a lot deeper with it. The only other thing I had kind of an issue with from a storytelling perspective is that, okay, Lindsay Lohan and Julia Butters switching bodies makes sense. The mother and daughter mirroring what happened before. That makes sense. But Sophia Hammonds and Jamie Lee Curtis switching bodies, it gives them the opportunity for plot convenience, so their shared character can sabotage the wedding and make it look like it's just, an overprotective mother. It makes it easy for them to do and easy for them to wrap up at the end. I get that. But the problem is that because these two characters don't really have an on-screen relationship that we really get to witness, their story beats are separated from each other. Jamie Lee Curtis really doesn't get anything out of this time, aside from the momentary, feeling of what it's like to be young again. But other than that, she doesn't learn anything. And I wonder if there was a time when that was different in the script. It seems like there's hints of that. Like maybe learning that other people can help too. She doesn't know everything. Because, the reason I say that is because they have this thing at the beginning where Jamie Lee Curtis is now doing a podcast and talking about how she's been co-parenting her granddaughter. Okay, fair enough. But what about Mark Hamill? So Mark Hamill has not been co-parenting his granddaughter. He hasn't had any. He's just kind of been the other guy. He's the Marianne and the professor of this family.
A movie star and the rest.
What's this and the rest crap?
And then at the all is lost moment.
The all is lost moment!
For the first time with when Sophia Hammond is in Jamie Lee Curtis's body, she does get to have an interaction with Mark Hamill and kind of get his thoughts on all of this and all the craziness and where he stands on all of it. And it's a good scene, but it feels disconnected. And again, I wonder if there wasn't another storyline for Jamie Lee Curtis that got rewritten or got edited out, or there was going to be more connection with Sophia Hammonds and Mark Harmon. I call him Hammond, sorry. Than there was. I don't know, but it feels like the Lindsay Lohan Julia Butters relationship is the core of the film, and the other two are just kind of there. They're driving the plot. So it doesn't feel like as much growth is done on either one of their parts, so that when Sophia Hammonds has a heel turn and then has a face turn, it doesn't necessarily feel as earned as the previous one. It's not to say that it's not earned. They do have some good scenes together, and we do get to understand her character better, but it just seems like their growth as people is not as strong as the Lindsay Lohan, Julia Butters one. Sophia Hammonds gets a good one, but I wonder if hers was meant to be a little bit clearer to trace, as opposed to what's kind of on screen, where it seems like she sabotages them just because she's a bitch, and then has a change of heart out of almost nowhere. You know? It just feels unbalanced, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's my major complaint, is the distribution of lessons and character arcs and all of that felt uneven. And especially when you have such a strong one, and you have 4 really strong actors, when something like that happens, it's way more noticeable, at least to me. I don't know if anybody else is going to have this complaint. I keep hearing a nagging voice in the back of my head, complaining, telling me to shut up, and your points of view are wrong, and you're not a girl, so you don't get it. I keep hearing that nagging voice in the back of my head. So maybe I am wrong. I don't know. I'm just saying that was the issue for me. But I want this clear. The movie we got is still good. The movie we got is still fun, enjoyable, lighthearted, heartfelt. And I'm just speaking personally, it makes my heart happy to see Lindsay Lohan back and having fun and being happy. It really, you hear some of these heartbreaking stories, and hers is, God, it's so tragic, that poor child and what she went through. You hear ones like her and what Tom Felton went through after the Harry Potter films, what Ivana Lynch was going through in her life, and to see them all, see Tom Felton on Broadway, to see Ivana Lynch, doing fan appearances and looking healthy and happy, and to see Lindsay Lohan back up there, and she looks really happy, and that just makes me happy, because I think that child deserves that, and I'm so happy that she's getting it. So yeah, maybe that's giving me some rose-colored glasses as it relates to this movie, but it was just good to see her and Jamie Lee. Yeah, it's just a good film, folks. It's an uplifting little movie. It's not going to set the world on fire, but for what it is, it's better than it had any right to be. I'm talking in circles. Let's wrap this up. So final grade for Freakier Friday, I give it a B+. It is the best possible version of what it set out to do. However, before I leave, I do have one question. So they've done a sequel to this one. Why not, and this is me actually advocating for something I'm not a fan of, but I'm going to say it. Can we get a Parent Trap 2? Can we? Because it always feels like, from what I see on social media, it feels like the Parent Trap was a bigger influence on kids of that generation than Freaky Friday, at least I think. And I'm not speaking, I can't speak for anybody. I'm just saying from my observations. But could we get Lindsay Lohan back to do a Parent Trap 2? I would love that. I know we lost Natasha Richardson. I know, but not both Brian Keith and Maureen O'Hara weren't in the original Parent Trap 2, which yes, they did do an original Parent Trap 2. So you don't have to have them in it. So you can just say they're off on their honeymoon or something like that, or you could maybe work it into the story. I don't know, but I who am not a fan of those types of movies, the 20-year sequel thing, I'm not a huge fan, but I would actually like to see that. So maybe that's me. Okay, I've rambled on long enough. There's my opinions. So thanks for coming along. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for listening. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.